It's an honor to be here today. And what Joe was just talking about is what I love about this church, the priority that it puts on the Word. It, to me, if everybody is here is looking for spiritual growth, and to me, the thing that matters the most is getting into the Word. Because you find out who God is, His love, His promises. You find out who we are, weak and in need. And you find out a little about how do we live this life in this world. So as he was mentioning, throughout the year, they have been talking about reading the Bible in 31 days, reading the Bible in 40 days, reading the Bible. It's all good. I have read the Bible in 90 days. And one of the things, like Joe mentioned, is you will get themes that are even interwoven throughout the whole Bible. The first theme you'll get is the gospel story. Right from the get-go, God has a plan for redemption for his people. You'll see that throughout the story. Then you also will find God's sovereignty. God did not create everything, grab a suitcase, and walk away. He is active. He is active in the lives of his people, and he is active in this world. And the last thing is submitting to God. This part is what we're going to talk about today. Trusting God and submitting to him. And we're going to discuss that by talking about how to trust God through trials. And we're going to do that with James. So let me give you a little background about James. He was the half-brother of Jesus. And when Jesus was alive, he wasn't a believer. However, after he died and resurrected, he became one of the leaders of the church. And when you read his book, it's very unique to a lot of other books in the New Testament. It is really a practical guide of Christian living. So when you look at the Old Testament, you'll look at Proverbs as a practical guide of wisdom. James is a practical guide of Christian living. So some of the themes he talks about in James is true faith is active, the importance of controlling your tongue, the power of humility, the power of prayer. And the first theme what we're going to talk about that he talks about is dealing with dealing with trials. What I will tell you is that he does not pull any punches. And that's what you find throughout the Bible. It's going to be genuine, and he's seeking genuine truth, but we will go through it all. So let's start with James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Consider it pure joy. But here's a great thing about the Bible. So, again, reading it fast, you get a quick overview. When you actually read it verse by verse and word by word, it is so deep. That's how I know it's true. There's no other book that you could read word by word and it could go so many different ways. When you read this, come on, consider it pure joy when you face trials? That doesn't sound right. And you know why? Because naturally, our natural instinct is to avoid trials. We want to get as far away from trials as we possibly can. But what James is telling us is so let's start with consider it. When he says consider it, it also means to think about it or evaluate it. So he's saying evaluate why we should enjoy these trials. Why? Because we know that the testing of our faith produces perseverance. So there is a bit of faith there. They believed that the testing of their faith will create perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you will be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So basically what James is telling us is that not that we're masochists, that we love pain, but we know and trust God that he will get us through these trials and we will grow spiritually because of it. I think as I was doing my study for this, I think the best way that I felt that it was brought together was by John MacArthur. He says, God brings such tests to prove and increase the strength and quality of one's faith and demonstrate its validity. We're going to get to that validity part. But that's what it's about. And I was thinking, how's the best way to illustrate this? And throughout the New Testament, you'll get a lot of examples of running. Well, this year I decided, I don't know why I decided to do it, but I did, to run the marathon again. And when you run the marathon, you are planning months in advance, and every week you start with a long run of 3 miles. And eventually you're going to run 26 miles, but you're building that up over time. 3, 5, 7, 10, up until your longest run, which is 20 miles. Now, I can tell you after the first run, that first long run, after 3 miles, if somebody said, okay, you ready? Ready for the marathon? There's no way I would be. But after I finished the 20th mile, after I went through all of the trials of those runs, I was confident to do it. And that's kind of what I'm illustrating here. That as we grow in faith and we have these trials, and here's the deal, everybody's gonna face trials. Nobody in this room is gonna avoid that. But as we do that, we will grow in our faith. So how do we do it? How do we have this joy when we do it? So I was thinking about how would the world tell us to do it? How about a growth mindset? Maybe we should have a growth mindset. So I went on AI, because it's a simple way to get information, and I'm just going to explain what it says. Mindsets are rooted in belief in oneself. I'll say that again. Mindsets are rooted in belief in oneself and the nature of abilities and intelligence. These beliefs shape how individuals respond to situations, influence their motivation, resilience, and an overall approach to learning and growth. Individuals with a fixed mindset believe that their abilities are static and unchangeable. They may avoid challenges, give up easily, and see effort as a sign of low ability. Individuals with a growth mindset believe that their abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. They embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, and see effort as a path to mastery. So, growth mindset. That's not what the Bible says, though. Let's go to verse number 5, because when James says, how do we do this, what does he say? If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. You're going to see this throughout. When you read the Bible, this is what you're going to notice. The natural way, what we tend to think this is the way that we're supposed to do things, and the Christian way, the Spirit working. And I will tell you, you'll find it often completely the opposite. So what does the world tell you to do? Change your growth mindset, and believe in yourself. And what does the Bible say? Come to God, and He will give you the answers. So as again, this is showing the depth of the Bible. We went through 5 verses, and I could go through. There's so many ways to go around. So what I'm going to do is look at the Bible as a way to validate what we're talking about. So let's start with the idea that, and just so you know, I'm going to be full disclosure here. I thought this too, that when I became a Christian, trials are going to be less, and all I had to do is check that box, and now I'm good. But what does Jesus say? So in John 16:33 he says, I have told you these things so that that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. What about trying to work out this idea of what you naturally think about, or what the world tells us to do, and what God tells us to do? Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do you see why this is such a priority that we put on the Word? Because there's no other way to renew your mind but to learn about what God tells us. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. What about the fact that we should be joyful in trials? Well, in Philippians 4:6, he says, do not be anxious about anything. Some things? Nothing. Anything. But in every situation, we think about our growth mindset? No. By prayer and petition, which is what we're doing, is we're asking God, we're praying to God. With thanksgiving, we're thanking God. Present your request to God, and what happens? The peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. I'll finish it with this last one on asking God. In Matthew 7:7, Jesus says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be open. So as I mentioned, I've been a Christian for 30 years. And I've thought of a lot of things that I've had to grow out of over time. When I heard this, ask whatever I want, I was like, man, God's like a genie. This is awesome. I could just ask for whatever I want. But in actuality, what it's basically telling is basically we have to, once again, trust God and know that he has a better purpose for us. So there are going to be things that we ask for him that God does for us. But there are going to be many things that he does not. And ultimately, these are the things that matter. Why does it matter? Well, when you think about how most people look at life and say, what are the things that we strive for? If you ask 100 people, let me just grab some water. Hold on one second. When you ask, you're clapping for that? When you ask most people, what do you think most people will say? Wealth. Would you say that? Yeah. Well, God puts a precedence on wisdom. So in Proverbs 3:13-15, what does he say about wisdom and understanding? Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Ultimately, the wisdom that we can get from the Bible is more powerful than anything else. And that's kind of where Paul is going to start shifting, and we'll get to that. But I was also thinking about this in this way. So when you think about it, we're all hopeless. We all need God. If we think about it this way, if we're dependent on God, we need God, and we need to grow spiritually. If it was the case that we're going to have no trials and it'll be an easy life as a Christian life, what do you think would happen? Well, would we revert back to our old ways and say, hey, it's working pretty well. Oh, I got that Christian checkbox, but I'm good. Thanks, God. It is these trials when we are desperate, when we are trying to find out what our next step will be, that we run to God and depend on him. This is why it's so important that we have them, and we understand that we have to trust him through it. So let's move on to James 1:6-8. And remember, I said some of these things are going to be intimidating. And James now talks about when you ask him, how you should come to him and ask him. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable. Tough words. I'm sure everybody in here has read those words and go, uh-oh. Let's look at what it's saying. You must believe and not doubt. That is faith. And I don't think there's a better verse in the Bible that explains faith like Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see. We have to understand that when things get tough, when we lose that job, when we get a bad health report, or if we lose a loved one, we have to lean on what the Word tells us to do. Romans 8:28, and in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. All things. But again, this is a tough, this this verse is tough. And I will tell you, as I mentioned before, I have gone through it. So if I could go through my 30 years of faith, it would be like this. And these are years, by the way. And eventually, I got it. For me, I just kept thinking, what do I need to do? I got a type A personality, so it's that growth mindset thing. So I'm just like, all right, what do I need to do? How do I got to work harder at this? And the more I did that, the more I realized that this is completely opposite to that. It is realizing you can't do it and submitting to God and trusting Him. And then, for me, that's when things changed dramatically for me. So now, what I like what James does now is that as we're going into this, now he's going to shift the perspective a bit. And he goes to James 1:9-11. Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich should take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wildflower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away even while they go about their business. So up to this point, you might say, well, that growth mindset's not bad. And you know what? It does work. I'm not saying it does, because I think that the growth mindset in work, if you apply that in work, maybe it will work. But what about the fact that we're here temporarily? How's that growth mindset going to be when we know that at some point we're not going to be here anymore? And that's the perspective that he's now we're making this change. He is now talking about the temporary things of life. And what he's talking about here is the reason he says at the beginning, believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, is because when you are humbled, you will be dependent on God. But if things are going really well for you, you will be humbled. And we've seen it so many different ways. How many times have we seen those stories of people that have done everything the world has offered? The money, everything, all the things that they have, yet they're in desperation, they're hopeless. And it's because we cannot put our faith in these temporary things. And this is where he transitions, and this is where we need to turn our focus when we are facing trials. James 1:12, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. When we are dealing with the trials that we are going to deal with, and everybody's going to deal with them, our focus needs to go away from this world to eternity. Because of the fact that eternity is forever. This is temporary. And when I think about it, I often think, everybody's involved in what's going on in today, but not everybody looks to what the true hope of the gospel is. So what is it? The hope of the hope of what we hope for, and the assurance of what we cannot see. And when we kind of summarize, as I conclude, and we summarize what James has started to talk about, first and foremost, he says we are to be joyful in our trials because of the fact that will grow our faith and help us through those trials. And when it gets tough and we don't have an answer to it, we ask God. And we should always remember that the things in this life are temporary, and our focus needs to be eternal. And for me, when I think about eternity, I think about Revelations 21. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. So the Bible is here for us to learn about God because that's how he speaks to us here. But he is one time going to be with us. The Word is going to be with us. And what this summarizes in regards to everything we've talked about today, as far as the trials of today and the eternity that we should be focused on, is he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. So as we've gone through this depth of what James is talking about, maybe we should think about it. Maybe it is joyful in our trials. Thank you.
So we're going to do something different today. And have you pull out your phone and your little notepad on your phone, or if you have a notepad in front of you. And just in the beginning here, every week, this is our time to kind of respond to what God has spoken, what we've heard. And as I was thinking about what Anthony said, joy. Right now, some of us are sitting in a mud pile. And you're just sitting in it. You're in a trial, and you're sitting in the mud. And the first step to maybe acknowledging joy is to say, even though I'm sitting here, I know God has never let me down, and God never will. That's how you can have joy sitting in mud. You know what? I'm in it. But I can have hope and joy knowing God has never let me down, and he never will. What I want you to do with your phone is take a moment to seek God. As Anthony has told us to ask, to pray. And just pray this prayer and maybe write something down. And here's the prayer you're going to pray. Ask, while you're sitting in this mud pile, this trial, what is the next clear step? God, what is the next clear step? And focus on what is in your control. God is everything that's out of your control. So as the team's going to start to sing this song, I'm going to ask you to just pray to God right now. Just take some time to ask God, God, what